Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the November 30th meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I'm President Becky Greenwald. You know, we've got something coming up in June, and it is our Singapore convention. Now, I don't know if any of you are planning to attend or go to Singapore, but should you be doing that, just want you to know that it's May 25th through the 29th, 2024, and the discounted rate for early bird registration is open now, but ends December 15th. So just letting you know, anyone that's a Rotarian is eligible to go, and they are planning side trips to India. So Singapore it is. Now, I thought for little tidbits on Rotary factoids, it might be fun to look back at the history of our conventions. The very first one was called together in 1910 by Paul Harris himself, and he held that convention in Chicago. And those of you that know our club history, we were formed in 1911, so that was just 1 year before we first became organized as Rotarians. And we were club number 27 in the whole world at that time. But back in 1910, the first convention, there were 16 Rotary clubs in existence, 16 total, and 60 people registered for that convention in Chicago. Come a long ways, baby, since then. Paul Harris was attributed as saying that we're going to try to have a good time as we go along. That is, we're going to intersperse good enough time so that you will remember this not as a sad occasion, but as a fun occasion where we conducted business. So over the years, Rotary has grown tremendously from that first convention of 60 people. And delegates went and they voted on and passed the bylaws and the conventions so that now it evolved into what we now see as our Rotary International Conventions. So I thought, well, when was the first convention held outside of the United States? Interesting little factoid. It was in 1921, and the convention was held in Edinburgh, Scotland, and there were 2,523 people attending at that time. Then, this was interesting, I didn't know this. 1945, it turns out that our government had a directive that would limit the size of gatherings that involved travel outside of your local community. Now, I'm not old enough to experience that myself, but I had never heard about that part of it either. But rather than request an exception in 1945, Rotary decided to hold 4 separate conventions in Chicago between May 31st and June 14th. So they had 4 different conventions, but the total registration for all 4 were 141 registrants. So that made it the second smallest convention in all of Rotary history. So that makes you wonder, well, what was the largest convention to date? Anybody want to guess? And maybe somebody was here that went to that one. 2004, Osaka, Japan, 45,381 people. Now, that's a big convention. So, in case you want to plan ahead, future conventions have been noted. Next 2025, year after Singapore, they'll be in Calgary, Canada in June. Then in June of 2026, Taipei, Taiwan. In 2027, Honolulu, Hawaii, and June 28, Manila. So there you have the past, current, and future quick snapshots of our conventions.
Well, bring it to Des Moines, would you please?
Sure. Get rid of that, wouldn't you? We'll work on that. I think you have more influence there.
That's what I was thinking.
Very good. Well, then we'd have big attendance. So at any rate, we don't have an official moment of inspiration because a little bit later we get to introduce 2 of our newest members of our Rotary Club in Des Moines, and they in themselves are inspirational people. So we'll get to hear about our 2 new members just a few moments. But in the meantime, I would like to lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would stand, and then our 5-way test. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is it the truth?
Truth. Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And is it fun?
All right. And now if you greet other Rotarians and our guests. Hi, I'm really good. How
And the pictures looked amazing. Oh my gosh. That's awesome. It's on my list. Yeah, that's great.
How are you? Oh, sorry. Nice to see you, Steve. Jeremiah, how are you?
Good.
Are you on a keto diet?
Kinda, yeah.
Kinda, yeah.
Am I looking thinner yet?
Yeah.
Hey Steve, Carter Smith. Nice to see you.
Well, wasn't that interesting last night? Good to see you.
It really was.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I suppose you were happier than me. He's always so enlightening. I actually got interviewed by him in D.C. one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I ran for Congress, and so I was there, and he was had me in. And so I was like, oh man, it was fun. He's a really amazing guy.
Sounds the first time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's always very insightful and usually pretty darn right. Okay, everybody, we've got new guests to welcome today. Hello. You're such a chatty bunch. This is great. Listen to this excitement in the room. Good to see you having a good time, right? Good time. Let's go ahead and introduce our guests, and I ask our guests to remain standing, and once we have everyone introduced, we'll applaud all at one time. So, Charity Baird of Bank, the guest of Katy County. Up you go, come on, and please stay standing. Amy Collar, CFO of Des Moines Waterworks, the guest of Ted Corrigan, back here in the back. Holly Larson with Anderson Accounting, the guest of Bruce Kelly. Hello, Holly. Angie Fonku, President of Sidekick Development, guest of Josh Brady. And Jeremy Gunther, Transit Writers Advisory Committee, and the guest of our speaker. Welcome to all of our guests. So now it's tumbler time. If you don't have a little dollar sign on your badge, we would really love it if you put $5 into the little cup on the table. And even if you do have the dollar sign, we always accept donations on a regular basis. This money all goes to help support our Rotary Club of Des Moines Foundation, which provides the wonderful projects that we're able to present for our community. And as always, thank you for your continued support. And so now, where in the world is Club 27? Well, Susan Judkins was in Dubrovnik and Split, Croatia, having a wonderful time in Eastern Europe. Glad to have you back in this time zone, Susan. And remember, you can always check out your own little Where in the World is Club 27 stick and take it if you're traveling somewhere fun or doing something interesting here in town. We want to go with you. And we want to extend happy birthday wishes. We have two members today celebrating birthdays, Jim Vickery and Sherry and Kosi. And I'm not sure, but we're not able to have either one of them here. But when you see Jim, give him a high five. He's turned 92 today. And he is a past president. Okay, so at our November 16th meeting, Ann Schmierda, the CEO of Blank Park Zoo, told us about another way for our Rotarians to give back. And she asked you, you know, we asked for your time, we asked for your money, and now we're asking for your blood. So, is there anything else to give? We'll see. But the Blank Park Zoo is hosting a blood drive with the American Red Cross, and this is an initiative of our Rotary District Governor, Dennis Drager. He's asked Rotary clubs across the district to track blood donations over the course of this year. And there's information at your table about that. It's on Tuesday, December the 12th, the blood drive. You can sign up for that and have a time to go in specifically for your donation. And it's between the hours of 1 and 6 p.m. in the afternoon. Encourage you to share this with your friends, family, and co-workers. There'll be people from the community eligible to go to the blood drive, people from the zoo, and then we hope lots of Rotarians can join us as well on the 12th. And if you donate blood anywhere else throughout the course of the year, come in and let Kitty know about it. If you go to life service someplace else, just let her know, and we'll keep track of that as well and let our district governor know what we've been doing. So there's your request. Whatever you're doing on December 12th, 12/12/23, you can give a little blood. That'd be gratefully appreciated, and Dennis Drager will appreciate it. And so now we want to talk about what is happening in the world of new members. And it's my distinct privilege and pleasure to welcome 2 new Rotary Club members to the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I'm going to introduce Doug, and then we'll introduce Steve next. So if Doug, you could make your way towards the lectern here. I'd like to let you know that Doug is the Executive Director for the Iowa Chapter of Alzheimer's Association. We've seen you before at our lectern. And he was sponsored for membership by past President Matt Busick. So thank you, Matt, and welcome, Doug. So we ask our new members 5 fun facts that'll kind of help you think about what you might want to strike up a conversation with these gentlemen when you see them the next time. So I told them I was going to share the 5 facts that they let us know. They're both going, oh my gosh, what did we write? So we'll see. We'll see if you agree to remember this. The question number 1, you've got a free day. What would we find you spending your time doing? Spending time with family. Good question, good answer. Same answer. We could make this like the newlywed game. Right. What can I say? You want to change your answer?
No, that's a good one.
Okay, all right. Now, where in the world have you traveled and you can't wait to get back to? Duluth, Minnesota. Now, that one's worth some inquiry. What does it take you to Duluth? So be sure to ask. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Don't go to Duluth.
In the winter? Okay. If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it, like the way you think. And what talent or skill do you possess that might surprise or delight people? I don't understand this one. You like to do your own stunts.
I do.
But what do you consider a stunt? Come on over here. What's a stunt?
I think we all do our own stunts, right? But my stunt that I do the best is hit my head on things. So you think if I was 6'6" or 6'7", I have to duck all the time, but I'm not. I'm 5'8.5" and shrinking by the year. So if you need somebody to hit their head and laugh, I'm your guy.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, now you're joining Rotary, and what can't you wait to tell friends about our organization? This was very nice. Specific to the Rotary Club of Des Moines, it's one of the oldest and most impactful clubs in existence, and full of members who have made a tremendous positive impact for the Des Moines area, whether it was personal or through business. Thank you. We appreciate that. We're so glad you decided to join us and become part of this fantastic group. So just a little bit about Doug. He and his wife Penny have been married 23 years, and they live in Grimes. Their son Kendall is a sophomore soccer player at Buena Vista University, and daughter Vanessa is a senior at Dallas Center Grimes High School and plays basketball. So welcome, Doug.
Thank you.
Welcome, Doug. We're delighted. And now, Steve, please come forward. And again, it is my honor to introduce Steve Stevenson. Steve is retired from Unity Point, Des Moines, fairly recently.
Yes.
Like when?
A year ago.
Yep, 1 year ago, and is sponsored for membership by Steve Seipel. Thank you, Steve. Okay, now, We asked Steve the same 5 fun facts. You've got a free day. What would we find you doing? A do-it-yourself project. This is a sense of humor, usually with more enthusiasm than skill. Okay.
Usually multiple times.
Okay. Where in the world have you traveled that you can't wait to go back to?
New Zealand.
Yeah, New Zealand. Sounds fun. And what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Let your life speak. Let your life speak. That's pretty thoughtful. And few words says a lot. Thank you. And what talent or skill do you possess that might surprise or delight people? Optimism. I don't know, you think people think you're a curmudgeon and they're surprised by that?
I'm trying to plant that
Oh.
rumor.
Very good, okay. And you're joining Rotary. What can't you wait to tell your friends about our organization? Rotary connects you with interesting stories and great individuals. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you.
I do want to let you know, Steve was born in Madera, California. That's in the San Joaquin Valley between Fresno and Chowchilla. And he was an Army brat. You traveled and had post office and addresses in 18 addresses in the US and Europe by the time you graduated from high school. And he graduated from UC Berkeley and later to the University of Davis, California Davis School of Medicine with the MD. Steve's a retired United States Army colonel, and he earned the Legion of Merit honor 2 times in 1994. And I'm just going to add something about that. The Legion of Merit is one of only 2 neck medals, the other one being the Medal of Honor that's presented to the soldier or military person with the ribbon around the neck. So we need to find out more about those 2 Medal of Merits. And that is done and presented for exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding services and achievements. So congratulations. Steve went on to work as the Chief Medical Officer at the Valley Children's Hospital, then Blank Children's Hospital, where he served as president from 1992 to 97, and again from 2016 to 2022. And you were recently the Unity Point COO before president of Unity Point Physicians and Clinics of Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota. Now retired, Steve's been married to Martha for over 50 years. They have a daughter, Tracy, who's also an MD and lives in Des Moines with 4 children, and their son, Brett, with a PhD, and 2 kids in Melbourne, Australia. That makes 6 grandkids, kind of spread around the globe, so but you do some traveling.
You bet.
And again, thank you, both Steve and Doug. We are delighted that you chose to join us as members of our club number 27 out of 44,000 clubs in the world. So welcome. Jackie. I'd like to introduce Jackie Norris to come forward and introduce our speaker.
Hello, good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Good. All right. It is my pleasure to introduce Amanda Wonke. She is the CEO of DART. Some of you may know that she snuck away for a little bit, and I'm so glad that they recruited her back. She was the deputy CEO and the COO for 7 years at DART. And as I thought about introducing her, I wanted to just say 2 things, maybe 3. Number 1, if you haven't met Amanda, she's dynamic, she's energetic, and she is tough as nails. Number 2, I'm going to ask you a favor. When you listen to this talk today by Amanda and by DART, I want you to think about what you as an individual, what you as a business leader, as an organizational leader can do to help DART. DART is regionalism. DART is collaboration. DART is communities coming together to solve a massive issue in our community, which is moving people from place to place. It is a complex, hard problem. And if you've paid any attention to the news in the past week, Amanda has been given quite a few challenges in her first month or 2. And so I'm excited for us to listen and learn, but I also know that one of the warmest ways that you could welcome her back to DART is to be thinking from a solutions lens on how you can support her in this massive challenge ahead. And so, welcome. Well, thank you. That is a fabulous introduction, and I'm so glad to have gotten to know Jackie over the last few years. And thank you, Susan Judkins-Justin, for the invitation to speak today, and all of the work that goes into having this Rotary Club happen day in and day out. And so really appreciate these groups. So thank you. As Jackie said, DART and transit are all about our region. So I want to share just a little bit about what is happening with DART. Like I said, you've probably heard and seen some things on the news. So share a little bit about DART that I think will provide some background and information and guide the discussion. Then I'm going to have Jeremy. Jeremy was introduced as one of the guests. Jeremy is one of our riders who serves on our Rider Advisory Committee. He lives in Urbandale and works downtown at Principal, so he can share a little bit of his experience, but also want to leave plenty of time for questions. So let's talk a little bit. Okay, I always think it's the clicker. It's green. Okay, let's see. Okay. So we'll start. We're gonna do a little trivia. So somebody has to answer, and Jeremy can't answer because he'll know the answer. So pre-pandemic, how many rides did DART provide on an average weekday, and/or how many rides per year? Any guesses? Oh, come on, you guys are quiet. How many?
300,000.
300,000 a year? A week. Woo, I like the way you think. So you're close, but not quite. But I'd love to get there, and I think there's a path there. So pre-pandemic, we provided about 15,000 rides per day. And that equated to, pre-pandemic, so the numbers up here are post-pandemic, 4.4 million rides a year. So if you think about, just to put that in context for you, the airport, one of our other key transportation infrastructures, last year provided just under 3 million rides a year. So again, both incredible, important infrastructure components to our community. Last year, we were back to 11,500 rides a day. This year, we're already up over 12,000 rides a day. And so ridership continues to grow. We back to that pre-pandemic level, and we're at about 80% of pre-pandemic, which is above where many transit agencies are, and I think speaks to what is happening in our region as a whole. Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. What's the number one reason people go take the bus? Sorry. You just saw the answer if you were paying attention. What's the number one reason people take the bus?
Get where they want to go.
All of the above. All of the above, and we'll get to whether people have a car or not actually next. So the number one reason people ride is work. So nearly 60% of our riders take the bus to work, Jeremy being one of them. And the other two top reasons are medical and education. So when we look at how we're driving the economy, these trips are essential to driving our economy. The people who are serving in our community in many ways, and lots of them wouldn't have access to their jobs otherwise. So let's talk a little bit about that. What percentage of DART riders don't have a working vehicle? How many would you guess? 80. 80. It's high, 80%. Not too far, 61% don't have a working vehicle. Another 25% only have one in their household. So you look, almost 90% of our riders know or one car. And they can be a household of 2 working parents, kids in school, kids in college, all sorts of things going on. And so as we think about that, many people say, well, why would someone have a license? Like, we're so used to, in Iowa, I have cars, my children have cars, like we all have cars. But you think about folks who are new to our community, new from other countries, need to learn the language, learn to be able to get around. Think about people who are trying to improve their lives in various ways. They might not have the money to afford a car. They might be coming out of incarceration or have a reason that they cannot get a car or have a driver's license. And then there's children that ride a lot as well. We have a strong partnership with Des Moines Public Schools that we're very grateful for. And so with that, you can see as you look at the household income that we only have 4% of our riders who make $75,000 or more. So DART really right now is a lifeline service for our community. Now, I know there's lots of conversation. I'll get asked by people, well, I really want us to have service to the concerts. Like, I want to be able to have a park and ride and go downtown at night. I want these fun ideas. Love it. I would love all of that too. First, we have to provide the best level of service we can for these key needs, and then let's grow from there. And I'll talk a little bit in a minute when we talk about funding, how some of our competitors are doing this. So, transportation is essential. You see here on the right, social determinants of health. Like I talked about, everyone is using transit in order to get to things in their life that are important to their health. So we talk about education. We have partnerships with Unity Point. We have partnerships with Principal to get people to work. We have partnerships with Des Moines Public Schools. Transportation is critical to all those things we want to achieve in our community. We're having a lot of conversations right now, important conversations about affordable housing, childcare. We don't have enough workers. A lot of that is connected by transportation. We can have all those things, but we have to have ways that people can get between them. So a little bit about DART. So DART, it was formed in 2006. It used to be the MTA. So it became a truly regional system in 2006. Our mission is enriching lives, connecting communities, and expanding opportunities. Most people are very familiar with our big buses. Our fixed route service that comes at certain times and throughout the day. And so that's what, when you think DART, most people think. But there's also a lot of other services. Paratransit is our door-to-door service for people who are unable to use a fixed route. And so we have a lot of increasing usage in that area, especially as our community ages as well. We also have a rideshare program, we've now called it Caravan, that connects people between jobs and between Des Moines and jobs in other parts of the state and vice versa. So it's essentially a van pool program. And we've really found it has changed a lot since the pandemic. It was started initially to get people from rural Iowa into downtown to work. We are now finding that it is getting more from Des Moines into some of the rural areas to work. So we have lots of vans to Pella, to Marshalltown, to Newton. So there's a lot, and we're getting lots of interest and questions as it relates to that need for workforce transportation. So funding, and this we'll talk a little bit about those other communities I was talking about. We are primarily funded by local property taxes. It is very typical for regional transit systems to be funded, for their operations locally. So this is very typical. Other regions, a lot of them use sales tax. Property tax is not the most common. Most have sales tax, some have income tax. But either way, it's always local funding for the operating, then some from fares and contracts, some from federal funding, and some from state funding. Now, the majority of our capital funding, so when we talk about buildings and buses and all that, that comes from the federal side of things. So that's kind of how that balances out. In Des Moines, a homeowner of a $200,000 home contributes about $104 annually, and that's about 2.2% of their total property tax bill. So one thing we've been having a lot of conversations about is needing different funding sources. If we talked about a regional system, one of the challenges that we are facing is that our property tax levy is limited at 95 cents on the $1,000, and Des Moines has hit that cap, so they're at that 95 cents. So they don't have another way to contribute to their part of DART until recently, which I will get into. But long term, we also know that property taxes is something that tends to divide community against community. Everybody's competing for the lowest property tax rate. That doesn't help us think regionally. It doesn't even help us think statewide. In our rural public transit systems, if you didn't know, Iowa has public transit in every county. So our rural public transit systems are challenged as well. And so we long-term want to get to a more sustainable regional funding source. In the meantime, and we have been lobbying for that for several years, last year, the legislature gave the city of Des Moines, only the city of Des Moines, the option to raise their franchise fee as a way to cover their part of their contribution to DART. So again, the city of Des Moines contributes $9.8 million this year. Because of some changes in the funding formula, and again, that funding formula is who pays how much, that city of Des Moines contribution goes way up. It means some of the suburbs are going down and Des Moines is going way up. What that means and why that came about was the commission decided several years ago they wanted to work on a new funding formula. So within that property tax bucket. How do we do this in a way that's fair and equitable? And Des Moines sees 70% of the service. So more than 70% of the service is in Des Moines. That said, there's this understanding that there's a regional connection, and so there's an agreement that Des Moines would pay 49% of the property tax revenue that comes to DART. But it's in the middle of being implemented. So they're going from paying 23% to 49%. So there's some differences of opinion on that, but again, anytime we're doing anything regionally, it's not easy. And that was the agreement that was come to, so you combine that is why Des Moines is having this issue, along with the fact that just expenses are going up. So Des Moines has an option in front of them, which is part of what we are gathering public input on, that if they don't contribute any additional revenue, in the next 5 years, we're looking at that gap, that $7.7 million gap, which means we have to cut service. Right now, again, in long term, I want other funding sources. I want us to think of this a little differently than we are today. But to fund what we have today, they need to increase the franchise fee to that 2.5%. That means that the franchise fee would go from 5 to 7.5%, and on a $100 utility bill, that increases that bill $2.50 a month. It does also allow them to lower the property tax rate. So if we aren't able to get that funding, again, if we have to look at the worst case scenario over the 5 years, that 40% service cut does mean that we are working on estimates of what things would look like at this point, but it would mean the majority of our buses would go from 20-minute service to 30 to 60-minute service. So right now it takes, in general, 2 to 3 times longer to travel on transit. So again, you saw people who are using this are going to work. They don't have other options, and it takes them 2 to 3 times longer. That's not what I want for our riders. That doesn't help. Think about if we go down further, think about if your garage door opened once every hour, and you had to plan your whole day around that. Maybe that garage door connects to another garage door, and you have to wait for that garage door. All of a sudden, to get to work, you've got to plan 2 hours. And that's not what I believe we want for our community as a whole. And talk a little bit about those communities we're competing against. Rochester, Minnesota, a smaller community than us, I don't think we probably compete with them for much in terms of conventions. They're putting in a $150 million bus rapid transit project downtown. Omaha has passed and increased their levies. Their levies for their $200,000 homes are going up closer to $140 a year. They're building bus rapid transit, they're doing light rail, or considering light rail, doing bus rapid transit. Toledo, Ohio, their state just gave them additional funding. And all these cities that we are competing against are putting more in, and we're having conversations about less. So if you have input on this, and again, there's this balance of short-term, long-term. Like Jackie said, I've only been in the job, this role, for 2 months. You know, this is the situation we're in. My goal is to be able to get to sustain what we have for a few years, but that franchise fee is not the long-term solution, right? Because that doesn't solve everything. So we need to work on a region and a vision for public transit in the future and how we want to fund it to grow the kind of community we want to be. So with that, again, we're collecting public input. You can give surveys, you can attend commission meetings, attend city council meetings, and we're expecting the council to vote in January. With that, I want to ask Jeremy to talk for just a minute. Again, Jeremy's on our Transit Rider Advisory Committee and works at Principal. And so I just want him to talk about that, his experience riding DART. You want to come to the mic?
Sure. Hi, thanks for having me. I'll tell you a little bit about where I came from. I'm not from Des Moines. My wife and I we're from Madison area in Wisconsin, and work has taken us, we kind of keep creeping south and west as the jobs that we find and as our careers grow, and it's not without a series of choices. And so listening to you speak, it's through one of those lenses that we ended up here. Like, being able to ride the bus to work, or some of this infrastructure, is what I would expect, I guess, as I come from somewhere else. I lived in Dubuque, we've been in other towns that are smaller, and it's part of our decision-making process. This is, like, I'm a person who, my wife and I, our family, we were drawn here, you know, for the job and for some amenities that are offered in this city, and this is part of that fabric, right? I don't have to ride the bus to work. I didn't before the pandemic. during the pandemic, I'm looking at this minivan that I wasn't really a fan of sitting in the driveway for months, and it was like, I don't really need to be paying insurance on that, and just sold it. So then you can feel things are gearing up again, and it's time to get a car again, because I gotta start going back to work, right? And I really thought it would be cool to get something that was old and unreliable. But I know that there's gonna be a moment where, like, it's snowing out, or I gotta pick up a kid from school who's sick or something. There's gonna have to be another little sliver of possibility in that equation, and I realize I do work at Principal, and one of the benefits of working at Principal is my badge at work functions as a bus pass, and that's a valuable benefit. I had never sat down, as I expect is common, I had never really sat down and thought about it. Like, I see the bus stops, I know this is a possibility, but the idea of getting a 79 El Camino off Facebook Marketplace really made me sit down and look at, can I do this? And it turned out I can. I'm gonna skip to the end. We got a Volkswagen. I am not getting it. Like, an El Camino. It's gonna be the car that our girls learn to drive in. It just didn't work out. But anyway, so I resent that vehicle, and I'm going to not drive it to work. Right? I looked it up. It turns out I live very near to the Bucks Arena, the ice arena, and I can walk about 6 minutes, somewhere between 4 and 6 minutes from my house to that bus stop that's at that parking lot of that arena. Take the bus. Riding the bus takes exactly the same amount of time as it would for me to drive as riding the bus. I don't know what my perception necessarily was at the beginning, but it's exactly the same, and it drops me off on the corner of the block that is entirely taken up by the building that I work in. So for me from the moment I walk out the door to ride the bus to work to when I'm sitting at my desk is actually a few minutes faster than if I drive, park in a ramp, walk the tunnel, and all that, which is cool, and I appreciate that. It also keeps me on time. I don't want to stand up here and, volunteer necessarily that there's some creative math about what time I'm gonna be at work when I'm in charge of my own self getting in the car, but like, I'll tell you, when you have to make the bus, you have to make the bus, and you make the bus, and then you're at work on time. And it's, so that's relevant. I feel like that's an impact. We have, at Principal, we're required now to go back to work just within the last month's time, I think. And one of the things that makes me personally not grumble about that is the amenities that are offered. Riding the bus to work, depending on which bus I come in and the bus that I leave on, I can take a nice long lunch and use the fitness center at work for an hour over a long lunch, sit in a steam room, and then get back to my desk, and I work a full day. It's dictated by that schedule, and there's no creative math of my timing or anything. And it feels like I'm living a great life that way in a lot of ways. So I'm gonna wrap it up, I think, here. Probably been talking for several minutes, but it's important to me, and this is, I feel like I'm not alone in this is something that I would expect from, a flagship employer in a state capital. This should work.
Thank you, Jeremy, and I know we are almost out of time. I think we have time for like one question, and then we'll be around, and Jason's like itching.
Well, I was curious, in comparison, you mentioned kind of the different regions, how they fund regional transit. In comparable sized cities, what's our ridership like? Because, I find that Des Moines specifically, and Iowans as a whole, we really like to drive places. And we also really won't park more than 2 or 3 blocks from where we're going, because every new development, it's like, what about the parking?
Yeah.
But when I go to another city, I wouldn't dream of driving. I park my car and I don't touch it until I drive back to Iowa.
Yeah.
So what's our use like as far as, if we need more funding, are we getting the use?
Yeah. Well, and the two go hand in
Of
hand,
course.
right? That's one of those things, because the biggest driver to someone actually using it is it coming frequently enough that you're going to want to use it. So you heard me talk about bus rapid transit. A lot of people don't know what that is. It is the closest thing to rail, but with a bus, and so that you can move it, right? So you have some nice stops, you know, it comes every 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something pretty frequent, you can use it. So, you know, we've had conversations, one of the key corridors that would be great for that would be like the University Avenue corridor, right? So a place like that would be great. Our ridership is pretty on par with regions. Again, Midwest regions, certainly if you look to the coast, you're gonna get more. But yes, the challenge of those who will often choose to use their car, and part of that is because it's not enough frequency. I still have to drive the majority of the time, which embarrasses me, right? Like, I shouldn't have to drive. But the fact is, to get from meeting to meeting, we don't have a strong enough system to get there. Yes?
Yes, what is the environmental impact of people going on a bus versus a car?
I should know that one off the top of my head. I know it is helpful to the environment, I just don't have the fact off the top of my head, but if you think about it, on average, so we ask about usage, because I know, I'll be honest, one of the questions I often get is, I see a lot of empty buses, right? I'll call that out. But a lot of people don't realize, it all depends where and when you see the bus. On average, our buses carry 17 people an hour. The busiest routes carry almost 30 people an hour. And again, those are averages. And so if you think about 17 people or 30 people an hour who aren't having to get into their own car, that certainly has that environmental impact. And then we are working on and looking at, of course, transitions to zero emissions vehicles, which further help with that environmental impact. So again, I know Becky needs to wrap it up. I really appreciate the time. And you know, if anybody wants to follow up with questions, again, we know as a region, when we want to do something together, we really do it. And our business leaders are essential to talking about the importance of public transit. Even if you're not all using it, there's a lot of our employees who are depending on it, and the growth of our community will be dependent on it. So thank you for the time, I really appreciate it. Great.
Oh, that was wonderful, Amanda. Thank you so much for all that informative information and the work that you do with our community. As a token of our appreciation, we've donated a book in your honor to the Des Moines Public Libraries, and your book will become part of the Rotary Rosie Reader Band collection. And that's possible because our club donated $40,000 to the Des Moines Public Library Foundation to purchase that band back in 2020. So now let's talk about our upcoming meetings. Remember, you and guests are welcome to attend, but we need to have an RSVP by Wednesday before the meeting at 9 a.m. to be sure we've got a seat for you. And you cannot register your own guests, you just need to do this through Kitty. So we encourage guests, we just need to get them registered ahead of time. Now, December 7th, next week, the annual meeting is going to happen. So this will not be a normal speaker meeting, it's our annual meeting, and we will announce our 2024-2025 Board of Directors. We will also announce and get to meet our $40,000 community grant recipient. So that is always an exciting day. We want to be sure to have plenty of people here to find out who our grantee is going to be for the next year. Then on the 14th of December, it's our holiday lunch meeting. We encourage you to bring your guests and family, actually your guests. We start out with an 11:30 eggnog reception, and then our regular meeting time of 12 to 1. And our musical entertainment this year is going to be vocal cords, and that is a Drake a cappella group. Again, for this one, reservations are very important for you and your guests, so be sure to get them in ahead of time. We look forward to having a wonderful holiday lunch meeting on the 14th. And then December 21st and 28th, we will not be meeting because we'll all be enjoying the holidays with our friends and family. So after that, 2 meetings in December, and we'll be seeing you in the new year. Want to thank you all today for being such a vital part of our club, the Rotary Club of Des Moines, club number 27. We mean business. Okay, Doug Bickford and Steve Stevenson, we're delighted that you've joined us as Rotarians, and we are officially happy to welcome you into the club and getting to know you both better. Until we meet again, let's get out there and have some fun and do good in the name of Rotary, and we are adjourned.